Thanks for tuning in to Live and Lead. To learn more about our ministry at the E2 Initiative, check out our website at e2initiative.org. Let's take a few moments today and talk about the subject of humility. But let's approach this in a way that you probably have never considered. A few years ago, I attended a leadership conference where one of the speakers talked about the importance of recognizing our personal blind spots. Now, a blind spot is an area in someone's life where he or she continually fails to see their situation or themselves realistically. It's what everyone else around them sees, but they fail to see themselves, even though it's right there in front of them. According to the latest research, most people have 2.5 blind spots. And by the way, for those of you who say, I don't have any blind spots, you've just revealed your first one. Learning about blind spots was eye-opening. After all, I could think, as you probably could, of more than a few people whose shortcomings were so blatantly obvious to everyone around them, but when they were pressed about or confronted with these shortcomings, they vehemently denied that they existed. I remember coming home from the conference and sharing my newfound knowledge of blind spots with my family. Now, I'm the only male in a family of 3 women, and they're not shy about sharing their personal opinions with me. So when I shared what I'd learned about blind spots with them, they replied, "Would you like for us to share what your blind spots are?" I shot back without hesitation, "No, because I don't have any." And they replied, "You've just revealed one of your blind spots." Ouch. You see, humility is the ability to be honest with ourselves. It's when we look into the mirror of our lives and don't like what we see, but instead of ignoring or making excuses for what we see, we commit to do something about it. We face our blind spots head on. We commit to change. It's not avoiding or discounting the critiques of others. It's hearing those critiques, taking those critiques to God to see if He is trying to teach us something about ourselves. In the Old Testament book of 2 Samuel, there's an event in the life of King David that provides a beautiful lesson about humility. In the 16th chapter, David is confronted by a man named Shimei. It becomes very apparent quickly in the narrative that Shimei hates David. Already forced to flee for his life from his power-hungry and bloodthirsty son Absalom, David finds himself being pelted both by stones and insults as Shimei's hatred is on full display. It's here where the story gets interesting. One of David's men asks for David's permission to put an end to Shimei's charade by removing Shimei's head. It's probably an offer that many of us would have readily accepted. And yet David's response is both shocking and insightful. "Leave him alone," David says, "and let him curse, for perhaps the Lord has told him to." Did you catch that? Maybe the Lord has told him to do this. You see, David recognized what many of us don't. Sometimes God will use other people to show us things about ourselves that we may be too blind to see, and He may even use our worst enemies. So instead of discounting the critics, we would do well to ask if there is something that God is trying to teach us through them. If not, then we just move on. But if so, we have to have the humility to change. So here is what I want to leave you with today. Maybe you, maybe I, maybe we all have a blind spot that we will never see without the intervention of others, even the intervention of the most unlikely people. Now, we may not like what we see when we look into the mirror, but if we choose to ignore what God is trying to show us, we will never grow to be what God wants us to be. Remember that it's one thing to finally see our blind spots. It's another thing to do something about them. That's why humility and courage always go hand in hand. Sometimes it takes more courage to be honest with ourselves than it does to simply take off the heads of our enemies.